Hello. I would like to say a small disclaimer. The audio is also going to be poor. I'm doing it on my phone. And I'm bound to hesitate or repeat a few words or not pronounce them, so I'm just warning you ahead. Anyway, rather than a presentation, I thought it might be fun to present it in a video instead. I have a link to the Google Doc file in the description if you wanted to see the script. Let's first talk about food production. Farms usually operate in a system. It has multiple inputs to allow the processes to take place to allow for the best outputs or crops. Only when the income from selling the outputs is greater than the costs during the other stages will a profit be made. Firstly, there are three types of systems in regards to what they grow. The first being arable farming, which cultivate just crops. The second being pastoral farming, which keep livestock but not crops. And the third being mixed farming, which is involved in both. Often in mixed farming, the crops are partially used for the livestock. Second is the system's purpose. One of the methods of farming is subsistence farming, which serves the purpose of feeding the family owning it and usually very small in scale. Often doesn't bring income and very labor intensive. The other is the opposite, commercial farming, which aims to sell everything that is produced, the main product, the byproduct, etc. This can be small or large in scale. Third is how intensive is the farming. There is extensive farming, which produces a small amount per hectare of land. This sort of farm covers a lot more land than intensive farming, but the input needed is lower. Intensive farming is the opposite. Fourth is how the crop is handled. One of the methods is organic farming, which does not use artificial chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, etc. More green alternatives are used, however it does require a higher labor input. But nowadays, there is an increase in demand for organic goods. It's also more favorable in regards to the environment, but, however, this doesn't produce guaranteed high yields or the best crops, which is why people opt for inorganic methods of treating the crops. There are numerous factors to consider when starting a farm, though. Physical, economic, social, cultural, or political factors. Physical factors can greatly affect the size of your yield, the hazards to be aware of, etc. If a country is mountainous, terracing has been and will be a solution. However, it is an investment, as the relief, climate, and composition of the soil in a country are physical limitations, and it's hard to alter. The temperature is crucial, and so is the rain. The total amount of rainwater and its distribution are important, as areas with long, steady periods of rainfall will give a bigger yield than short, heavy rainfall. There are numerous types of irrigation in case certain areas cannot get the rainfall needed to sustain a farm, but I'll let you read the information on the screen to save time. Pause if you'd like. Let's talk about economic factors. The costs and investment throughout will have to be considered. Land, tools, machinery, etc. Additionally, the change in the market also requires the farmer to purchase new machinery occasionally to keep up with the demands. Nowadays, in most countries, farms have become agribusinesses, opting for larger farms to achieve economies of scale, where due to the larger amount of items being made, the cheaper it is. However, smaller farms struggle to compete with this, so selling to bigger farms might be their only solution. There are also social or cultural factors that influence a farmer. Family tradition could influence the farmer's choices in produce, how the land is passed on or down, etc. In certain countries, the law states that upon the death of a farmer, each son will own a fraction of the land. However, most times will be too small to operate on anything other than subsistence level. Additionally, a portion can be given to the wife. This is about the only time in certain cultures that women can own property, as women in these societies have an unequal footing on whether or not they can own land. However, in more socially advanced cultures, with equal rights comes a thriving economy in regards to agriculture. Finally, political factors can also affect the farmer's choices. The government puts in place policies and such that aid or hinder the farmer's progress. There are such things as price support loads, which aid farmers until they sell the produce, production control, where they limit the amount of surplus crops, and income supplements, where the government helps fund the farmers in years where market prices fail to reach the levels that were expected. All of these factors, physical, economic, social, and political, will influence the farmer's final decision. let's look at a case study, the Ganges Valley. I'm probably butchering that. Intensive subsistence rice cultivation is located in the lower Ganges Valley in India and Bangladesh. The basin is India's most extensive and productive agricultural area and is densely populated. In the area, rice consists of 75% of the diet. The physical conditions make rice easy to grow. There are the following conditions present. A consistent temperature of roughly 21 degrees Celsius with 2 crops growing per year. Monsoon rainfall of 2,000 millimeters plus, flooding the fields. Alluvium is built up due to the repeated flooding. And a dry harvesting period. Rice is an incredibly water-intensive crop to farm. It's estimated that it takes 5,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of rice, and a lot of this cultivation is on a subsistence level, using traditional techniques. There are 2 ways of growing rice. Dry rice, which is cultivated on terraces, and wet rice, which is grown in silt and flooded. Dry rice is easier, but it gives a lower yield. This agriculture provides work for citizens, which is important in dense areas such as the Ganges Valley. The work needed goes into things such as building embankments, which are stabilized by tree crops, building irrigation canals, and cultivating other crops or keeping livestock in dry periods. And, well, of course, the usual labor needed to maintain a farm, from planting to harvesting. The farms are usually 1 hectare in size, due to the farmers being tenants. However, in areas around the world, unlike the Ganges Valley, they don't have land or good conditions to grow food for themselves. And so, I bring the topic of food shortages. Food shortages are caused by numerous reasons. Some of the natural causes are soil exhaustion, which means the soil can no longer support the crops due to it being poorly managed, drought, flooding unless it is desired, tropical cyclones, pests, and disease. Some of the more economic or political factors can be low capital investment, rapidly increasing population size, poor distribution of the food, and conflict situations like war. While these problems hit developing countries harder, developed countries still suffer from such shortages, but just can cope with them better. In the short term, malnutrition can seriously affect anyone, but especially children. It increases their risk of illness and increases their risk of deficiency diseases such as beriberi, rickets, and kwashiorkor. In the long run, those who are consistently malnourished never fulfill their potential, physically and intellectually. It also reduces their capacity to work, which prevents them from making as much income. This creates a cycle in developing countries which is difficult to break through. Sudan and South Sudan both have been suffering from food shortages. There are numerous factors that cause the shortage. Most of the information will be on screen for the sake of shortness. Physical factors, social factors, agricultural factors, and economic or political factors. There are a few possible solutions to food shortages, the first being food aid, whether that be relief food aid during a crisis, program food aid provided by the government, or provided to the government by a donor country to distribute, or project food aid, which aids specific groups. The second solution is named the Green Revolution, which, in India, resulted in hybrid varieties of cereals, such as wheat, rice, maize, sorghum, and millet, to be introduced. I can't pronounce any of those. They were designed to withstand the drought and grew for a shorter period of time. However, with everything, there were arguments made against and for the introduction of these crops. The advantages were that A. Yields are 2 to 4 times greater than before. B. The shorter growing season allowed for an extra crop to be grown. Farming incomes has increased, allow for the purchase of better equipment, seeds, fertilizers, etc. The diet became more varied. Local infrastructure had to improve due to the market approach. new employment opportunities, and an increase in the need and usage of irrigation. However, the other aspect has to be considered. For example, high inputs of fertilizers and pesticides were needed, which was costly and has increased rural debt. The crops require more weed control and are more susceptible to pests and disease. The income gap has widened. The increasing use of machinery has increased unemployment, increase in salinization, and apparently the taste is deemed inferior to traditional varieties. A big issue now is that these new varieties don't have the necessary vitamins and minerals needed, and because it replaced the other crops, people are now low in these micronutrients, which is something to consider. And that's it. That's it for food. I'll leave the next 2 videos on this page. They should be in a fairly similar style. In case there's information in this video that is not in the book or is related to the information I found interesting, I will link a source underneath in the description. Other than that, thank you. Bye.